The April 2nd, 2015 meeting for the Planning Commission and for the City of West Sacramento. Per tradition, we always start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Ms. Bernadette Austin to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we move on to our agenda, I'd like to point out that there are requests to speak on the side table over there. If you would like to address the commission on items on the agenda or not on the agenda, please fill out the form and give it to our clerk, Katie, over here. She will pass it to me. The forms need to be filled out prior to the end of the staff presentation for that item, so we'll take it all the way up to that point before we get to deliberation up here. Each speaker gets 3 minutes. There is a time clock. It's over there. And due to the number of requests to speak tonight, we are going to be following the time clock. Okay, so we have a rather special item on the agenda this evening. We are swearing in a commissioner, a new commissioner. We're going to be swearing in Andrea Lepore, and she is our city's first alternate planning commission member. So she will be filling in when one of us is unable. So Andrea, if you'd like to come up to the podium, Katie will be administering the oath.
Good evening. Commissioner Lepore, if you'll please stand, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, support and defend, and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Thank you and congratulations.
Well, welcome. I know there are some commissioners up here who know you and would like to make a couple of welcoming statements.
Hope you've been adequately warned. City of Sacramento recently hired on a colleague of mine, Bruce Monahan, as the urban design manager for the City of Sacramento. And, you know, there's been a desire, certainly on that side of the river, but I think regionally, to have a really strong sense of place and presence in our region, that there's a definite Sacramento feel to things. And I think that Andrea will be an excellent component to that. I was saying a couple weeks ago that on our commission, we have a really nice, well-rounded commission. We have a lot of expertise across several different industries. And I think that Andrea brings a really wonderful sense, both professional, personal, and educational background in design, architecture, and some modernity that I think we could really use in our city. And she's also a very successful businesswoman, so I think we're really lucky to have her as part of our planning commission. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. I'm excited to join you and honored, and I am a very new resident. I just moved to the Park Moderns in December. I think I was maybe the 5th person that moved in, and you know, I love it here, so I'm trying to recruit some more people.
Well, thank you, and welcome to the commission and to the community.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, next item on the agenda is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the commission. This is a special item in which the community members can address the commission. However, on these items, we're not allowed to discuss them. We have one request to speak, and that is from Bill Lowell. Hi, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. William Lowell, West Sacramento, for the record. I think I see one gentleman who I think has been here from the beginning, and so it's been a few years, and it's been about 32 years since YOLO Bus was formed, and I was at their first meeting. I've been just about every meeting since then of their meeting, and so it's been a long road, as they say. But what I find disgusting is here in West Sacramento, there's only one place that sells these little shopping carts for the public to bring their groceries home without borrowing the supermarket shopping carts and not returning them. And you would think people would cater to the needs and encourage shoppers, but the way it is now, with only one store carrying the shopping carts, why people are discouraged from shopping here. And the shopping carts that you can buy here in West Sacramento, the way it's designed, it's got cotter pin holes on the inside of the wheels, and you load it up with groceries, and after a while, those wheels break off. And I've had conversations with their headquarters, and so far it doesn't seem to do any good. And I don't know what it's going to take, but the other, on a lighter note, a couple of months ago, you can no longer get your film developed within the hour at the various drugstores and the big store over there. And everybody's sending them to Oregon, and it takes you a couple of weeks. Well, at least at this one camera place called Mike's Cameras at 2200 J Street in Sacramento, you can still get hourly service. And maybe there's some other camera places that still offer it, but rather than wait 2 weeks, I just thought I'd let the other folks know if they want it within the hour, they can still go down to 2200 J Street, and maybe they want to learn another camera and learn a faster way in the meantime. But yeah, thank you now.
Thank you, Bill. And I still have you on for agenda item number 3 later on. Okay, moving on to staff correspondence.
Yes, 2 items to note for the commission this evening. You should have in front of you a memorandum from our Community Development Director, Charlene Hamilton, regarding the YOLO Habitat Conservation Plan. Some information I'm providing you to in advance. This will be on our meeting next time. This document's rather lengthy, so we wanted to provide it to the commission earlier. What you have here is primarily a summary. We provided a link on to where this is being stored online for any commissioners that wish to, peruse the entire document. So we want to make sure everyone has that, and if we have questions, we can discuss that, offline. And second of all, I can remind the commission that this coming Monday, April 6th, is the orientation for commissioners, starting at 4 o'clock. Be here in our chambers. I know the mayor is going to be there and just talk about some of his expectations for the new commissions and structure. There'll be ethics training, and I believe they're also going to provide dinner. So if any commissioners should strive to attend that, even if you're a veteran commissioner, and should make your RSVP to the city clerk's office. That concludes staff communications at this time.
Thank you, David. Moving on to disclosure of ex parte communications. At this time, planning commissioners need to disclose any communications that they've had outside of this commission on on items that are on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I've actually communicated with a couple of church people on item number 3 and a couple of neighbors regarding our item number 3.
Thank you. Okay, just me. I also need to disclose that I have had numerous conversations. I've had numerous conversations with, are the speakers working in the audience? Okay. I will try and speak up as much as possible. I need to disclose that I have had numerous conversations with parents of the future Lighthouse Charter School. I've also met with the developer of the proposed site, not the churches, but the proposed construction site. And I have attended the school board meetings where the charter school was discussed. So,
Oh, I'll also disclose that I attended one of the school board meetings regarding the charter.
okay. Moving on, the consent agenda. This is consideration of the approval of the minutes from the March 19th, 2015 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all approved, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No abstentions?
Chair Liebig, if I may say, we are having some audio issues with the volume, so if I could ask the commissioners to speak loud and clear if possible, so everyone can hear.
Awesome, thank you. I will do my best not to swallow the microphone either, because it seems to echo there. So, all right, moving on to our regular agenda. Item number 2, this is public hearing regarding the proposed conditional use permit for retail auto sales in heavy industrial M2 zone at 1309 Tradewinds Circle. Ms. Allen.
Good evening, Chair Liebig and members of the Planning Commission. This item is a conditional use permit application for retail auto sales in the M2 zone. The applicant currently operates an auto storage facility at that location and has requested the CUP to add consignment sales on a limited basis at the same facility. The applicant is not proposing to expand the size of the facility and rather would use space inside the building for the required 2 parking spaces. The applicant is not proposing a typical used car lot scenario, but rather anticipates the sale of exotic or classic type vehicles at the location. Staff is recommending approval of the project as all findings can be made in favor. Staff requests that the commission conduct the public hearing and adopt the recommended actions for the project. I would be happy to answer any questions at this time. Also, I'll mention that the applicant is in the audience should you have any questions from her.
Thank you, Kathy. Are there any questions of staff before I open the public hearing? Okay, this time I will open the public hearing. Kathy, to clarify on that, is there a presentation, or is it that the owner is available for question?
She's here if you have any specific questions about her building. I don't think she has a
Okay.
specific presentation.
Thank you. At this time, then, I'll keep the public hearing open in case we have any specific questions of the applicant. And I will have the vice chair remind me to close it,
Okay.
should I forget. So, okay. Commissioners, I'll start on my right. Any questions, comments?
I do have a couple of questions that I was curious about. Did we run this past the fire department, Kathy?
Yes, the project was forwarded to the fire department and they had no comments.
Is this a sprinklered building?
That I'm not sure of.
Well, I guess my concern is, we can ask the applicant if you'd like, but if you have a bunch of cars stored in a building and they all have gasoline and stuff in them, if you have a fire, you have a major catastrophe. And obviously, you have to have a lot of insurance for these kind of cars. And I was just wondering, the fire department just looked at it and said, yeah, it's okay to store a bunch of cars in there?
I believe they're already doing that at this location.
Which is fine, I have no problem. Could you just look at your applicant and see if she has a sprinkler system for the heck of it?
Would the
She's
app?
nodding yes.
Okay,
Okay.
and that's fine. Then my other question is, when I drove by it and saw the facility, which I think is fine because it's gonna work out just great in there, when I drove around the corner, I saw that they're selling trucks out in front of that building right alongside the freeway. Is it okay to sell trucks there, or did we give them a conditional use permit? I don't remember ever doing that.
Are you saying they're selling trucks at this location or a different
Just
location?
right around the corner, I said. When I drove by, I went around the corner, and gosh, they got a bunch of trucks for sale out in the front lot, in a parking lot. And I was just curious if you'd given them a use permit for that, or something we have to look at.
Yeah, are you referring to like heavy equipment type trucks?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different land use classification. They don't need a use permit for that in the heavy
Oh.
industrial zone. It's only for the
For an automobile?
passenger vehicles.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Other questions on my right, on my left? Martha, was that also a no?
That's also a no.
Okay. This is one time that I actually don't have any comments myself. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Have we
Oh.
taken any public comment on this item yet?
There have been no requests to speak.
Okay.
And I will close the public hearing at this point. Thank you. Now I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we affirm the motion here.
Moved by Commissioner Moore,
Second?
seconded by, I'm sorry, I will get it, Ms. Guerrero. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None.
Any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and that appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is number 3. It's a public hearing on Lighthouse Charter School. It is for a conditional use permit at 15 Park Boulevard and 1511 Delaware Avenue. And this will be presented by staff Justin Hardy.
Chair, Commission, good evening. Tonight before you is a request to operate a charter school at both First Baptist and Trinity Presbyterian churches. The charter school is in their infancy stage of starting up, and both of these two sites is a temporary solution to their ultimate permanent location. They have a site established at Lighthouse and Fountain Drives up in the Rivers area that has been donated to them, but recent events have delayed the occupancy of that site. So in the meantime, they are looking to establish the transitional kindergarten through fourth grade, ultimately at between these two sites, starting in the 2015 fall school year. Both of the sites each have services as well during the church hours. Most of those do not coincide with the primary hours of the school. The ultimate amount of kids that would be at each of the facilities, the applicant can address more specifically the numbers that they have established as of today. Some of the two criterias that I've analyzed and put in conditions with the uses at each of the churches is a drop-off and pickup of a charter school. There is no bus service, so either the children walk with their parents, walk there by themselves, or they are driven. And with some of the questions and concerns that I received via phone, two of them were regarding traffic issues. One was, and they were not in support of the project. One was in support of the project that lived right next door and received a ComQuate response objecting to the project as well. So there's a total of 4 responses, 3 for, 1 in support. As I established the criteria of the project, conditions were needed mainly to deal with traffic, and I've relayed those issues to the applicant. That seems to be the largest issue at this side of what I've been hearing. I've requested them to have parking monitors on site to keep the flow of traffic moving, if signage is needed, and faculty out there to assist with that. They anticipate being a good neighbor and addressing concerns of the neighborhood if parents are dropping kids off in on the street curb. The conditions require them to do it on site to keep for the safety of the kids and traffic flow moving as best as possible. I do want to note that this use permit is for 3 years total, according to the applicant, and they can go into it in greater detail that this location wouldn't suffice their needs after the 3rd year. They will grow beyond the capacity of these church facilities. That concludes my presentation. I'll provide any answers and take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Actually, I have a question on your presentation. You mentioned that you requested parking monitors. Did I not read it correct? Aren't they required? Are they required or are they requested? Sorry.
I'm requesting them via their requirement in the conditions.
Okay, thank you so much. And a follow-up question regarding the length of the permit. There is no opportunity for extension or built into this?
I did state it in the conditions. If the 3rd year were to roll around and they don't have a final site selected, they could request for an extension. However, the applicant has stated that these sites will not suffice their needs, so.
Okay,
Yeah, but the potential for an extension is there.
is there, thank you.
You know, should that be necessary?
Okay. Are there any questions of staff before I open up the public hearing?
Yeah, actually, could you just describe, so there's an existing use permit by the church itself at one of the sites, is that correct? And this is a request for a different entity or applicant to have a use permit at the same site, right? So you'd have 2 use permits for essentially not the same thing, but a similar activity, right? Childcare.
Yeah, the use permit for the childcare started up here, just very similar situation, and then moved to the Higgins Road site after they were established. So they no longer operate that use permit at that location.
Okay, at this time I'll open up the public hearing. Was there a presentation for this project?
Yes, there is.
There is a presentation. Okay, I will call up the applicant then for a presentation. And for the record, if you could state your name.
Okay. I'm Peter Stone, and thank you for this opportunity to present before the Commission, Chairman Liebig and Commissioners. I'm Peter Stone, the Chief Business Officer for River Charter Schools, which has operated Delta Elementary Charter School in Clarksburg for 7 years, and now Lighthouse Charter School, which is slated to open August of this year, and actually by our approval from the school district must open in August of this year to meet our charter requirements. And we just thank you for the opportunity to speak on this conditional use permit. Hearing for the Lighthouse Charter School's temporary use of Trinity, Presbyterian, and First Baptist. And I want to also take this opportunity just to thank the city for the help that we've received from Justin Hardy in actually working on this use permit, as well as David Tilley and Charlene Hamilton, Randy Goodwin, Bob Porta, and Brian Johnson, because they've worked with us on a phase before this, which was looking at the churches to find out what would have to be done in obtaining agreement as to the ADA and life safety improvements that we'll be making and working with the churches to make so that it will be able to be an e-occupancy for the churches for this particular use. And we've read the conditions that are a part of the staff report and are in agreement with them and will abide by them. We have a charter agreement recently fully approved by Washington Unified School District that requires we open Lighthouse Charter School in the fall of this year. And 6 months ago, while working with the Rivers developer, Richland Development, to receive a donation of 7 acres of land, which, by the way, we actually haven't received the donation at this point. As we were working on the transaction, we found out that the land had toxic materials on it. So that put that whole acquiring of the land on hold for a moment, which led to us looking at other commercial opportunities. But due to transaction timing, construction timing that would have been required, we couldn't have done it in the 6 months, to be able to do this, start the school by August. So we're very thankful to Trinity Presbyterian and First Baptist for renting a portion of their facilities to us temporarily for a 2 to 3 year period while we prepare for the school's next site. And just to be really clear, we're very well aware of the fact that since there's a toxics issue on the site, that doesn't get cleaned up fast. So while we are still working with the developer to see what we can do in terms of solving other issues, in fact, we had a meeting with him just yesterday, with Clifton Taylor. While we're working on those issues, as soon as we get the school up and going in August, immediately we're going to be looking as though that land is not going to be ready in 3 years, and we're going to have to go into another interim facility. So we're going to work in a parallel path to get the land developed as quickly as we can, but not counting on it. Because as Justin mentioned, we're really well aware of the fact the reason we're doing 2 churches is because we needed more capacity than either church could do, and that's the reason for 2 in the first place. And since they happen to be about 600 feet apart, it just worked out well. So again, we're very thankful to the churches for their willingness to rent the space to us for this period of time. So for this temporary period, we'll not only be doing those things that address ADA and life safety, but we'll also be working to minimize the traffic impact on the neighborhood. And so we've started working with the California Charter School Association to look at best practices in terms of effectively doing student drop-off and pickup. Those best practices include regular communication with parents regarding the issue of being respectful and following the rules established. This, in fact, starts their parent meeting that we're holding next week at one of the churches with the parents, just to alert them to the fact that we're visitors in these locations. We're here for a period of time, and we need to be very respectful in everything that we do. Second, obtaining commitments from parents to be traffic monitor volunteers. Third, having drop-off and pickup routes flowing through the church parking lots. Portable signage to direct the flow of cars in and out of the drop-off parking lot. 5, having traffic monitor issued soft citations to encourage parents to follow the rules. 6, establishing drop-off time standards to keep things flowing. 7, giving neighbors to the schools the phone number of the school so that if they have issues that they can give us a call directly and that we will work on them. And I think most importantly is, with our experience running a school and growing it from 90 kids to 387 kids in Clarksburg, 2/3 of whom come from West Sac, is that we really, whatever we put in place ahead of time is going to have to be modified. And so we want to continually reassess what works and what doesn't work in the neighborhood and sort of morph it to that. But the good thing is we have the opportunity, both in running the school, in a church, and also in this traffic issue, to look at what other schools are doing. So we'd just like to thank you in advance for your support and approval of this conditional use permit tonight. And one of the reasons it's so important now is because we're ready to embark upon the building permits now that we've got agreement with the city and the architect as to what ADA improvements that we need to do, and still give the opportunity for the contractor to actually make all the improvements in the churches. And that way we can ensure that we can open in August, serve the families and children in West Sacramento seeking this educational choice while being good neighbors. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Before you sit down, are
Okay.
there any questions of the applicant? It's going to be hard for him, obviously, to come up and down, so.
You know, I was listening to everything you were saying about that. I didn't hear you ever talk about having any outreach to the people that are around that area. You heard from staff that there's a number of people that are very concerned about your school and the traffic and the noise and everything else. What have you done to reach out to the neighborhoods?
Well, one of the things that we have done is that even in the recruiting for the schools, their superintendent has actually met with, we've sent flyers out to, all of West Sac in the north part of town. But we haven't specifically gone door to door, to your point, to actually, address those concerns.
When you're going in to disrupt a neighborhood as majorly as you're going to, and you're probably going to disrupt the neighborhood, because we're talking about kindergartners, and I find it hard to believe in the beginning that the parents are gonna drive in and tell Johnny to jump out and go into his classroom. They're probably gonna wanna make sure he makes it there. Because my kids probably wouldn't have made it to that classroom. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I probably would have wanted to park and say, come on with me, let's get you in there. And that's a concern to me because you don't, if you have 50 cars, you have nowhere to put 50 cars in either site. So, I mean, what do we?
Well, what's going to happen?
I didn't, I was hoping we were going to see a diagram of how you were going to bring the parking in and how you were going to drop kids off and what the drop-off is. I mean, is it strictly a drop-off or are we
Yes.
going to have to go?
Yeah, what's going to
Take
happen
John.
is each church has, one church has 2 parking lots, one has 3. And we're taking the larger of the parking lots and actually have the cars route into that parking lot, go a
Okay.
little route through there, drop the kids off, and then come back out so that all the drop-off and pickup actually occurs on site.
Which I think is terrific.
Yeah.
I think that's a grand idea. That's what I was getting from this. But I mean, I really think you need to outreach to the community there. And you have that opportunity. Trinity has some lady that puts on a thing for all the state streets once a month, and I'm surprised you never went to that, or staff didn't recommend it, because, there's a lot of people in that area that I talk to that are very concerned about it, and they're very concerned what's going to happen because nobody's talked to them. So,
Okay.
that was
Okay.
my comment to you. Okay? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Comments? Alex?
Thanks for your presentation. I have a question about the possibility of reducing demand for driving and drop-off by exploring whether or not there are alternatives to a single-child vehicle for every child. Is there any possibility that perhaps children who live nearby could be escorted walking to school with something called a walking school bus, or that other techniques that are promulgated by a program called Safe Routes to School might be able to inform you of other things that
Okay.
you could do to reduce auto demand?
And that second one's name was?
The program is Safe Routes to School.
Safe Routes, okay.
It's being done pretty much in every state in the country by kind of a self-selected group of schools and school districts. But that
We'll
might
be happy to look into those.
Yeah, I think that might help you reduce the demand for drop-off.
Yeah. It just is, I can just add one sort of comment, is we've been spending a whole lot of our time up until a month ago, basically trying to make sure we got the school 100% fully approved and not going to Yolo County and other places for approval, and also making sure that we got the ADA issues resolved in the churches. So our sequencing has been heavily focused there, and we're really, in the next few months, going to be galvanizing into all these other issues while we're doing the actual work in the churches.
I understand.
Okay.
Martha, you?
Yes, I just, hearing Commissioner Moore's comments about dropping children off brings back some memories.
Only my children. Your children probably go right to class. My kids and grandkids, they don't. They go visit.
I have a self-disclosure. I have a set of twins. And when they attended Little Flower Missionary School in Lincoln Heights, we had a drop-off. This is kindergarten. We did have to drive in. There was no place to park, just the school grounds. And the nuns handle the traffic flow. getting all the way up, over and dropping the kids off. And we didn't experience any difficulties. I think they handled it pretty well. So I'm a believer that I think the traffic flow can work with little ones. It does take some educating. I think you're doing some parental education, but also reaching out to the community is a good idea. Maybe
Right.
having a combined meeting as well with the community and
Right.
a follow-up at some point, just to hear if there are any concerns. So if there's anybody that has some, at least they're feeling that they're being heard.
Yes, okay.
Okay, we have two more commissioners that have direct questions for the applicant before we open up or bring up the public comments. I have questions from Parveen.
Hi.
Hi.
So I had a few questions. Maybe I missed this in the staff presentation, but I was concerned, what is your enrollment currently? How many students are enrolled?
Okay, enrollment right now is about 145 with a target of about 196 to start. And that would be spread between about 140 at Trinity and about 56 at First Baptist.
Okay, so that was my
That's our target at this point.
So that was my next question. How are you utilizing the facilities? Will there, and the reason I'm asking is because I'm wondering, are there going to be, are kids going to be coming from one church to another church? Is lunch going to be served specifically at one church? And I was just a little bit concerned about the safety. I mean, we're in it's an open neighborhood.
Yes,
So even if it's
yeah,
only
that's
600
good.
feet apart, according to the map, it looks to me like there's 2 blocks.
Yes.
And one of those streets looks like a bigger street.
Our plan is to pretty much have them separately contained. The children that'll be at the Baptist church will have the lunches brought to them there. They will play there, and they will have their classes there. And then the other children will pretty much stay at the Trinity. And there will be some times when they may want to have some sort of a gathering for all the children together. And so obviously, infrequently, there would be the opportunity or the need to bring them all together. But for the most part, they'll be, staying at the separate campus.
Will the 56 is it the Baptist church? Are those specific grades? Or those the
That'd
younger
be,
children?
all kindergartners would be there. And what we really were doing is we looked at the facilities and the sizing of the classrooms that were available in the churches to work with what is there. And it just made the most sense in terms of the physical size and nature of the classrooms to have the kindergartners at First Baptist.
Okay, and then, well, I'm not sure if you've considered it. I understand that you're still newly approaching the traffic issues and various types of transportation, but have you considered, have you considered changing your goals for the enrollment number based on what sort of traffic conditions? I mean, if there's too much traffic and it's disruptive to the neighborhood, I mean, would you consider lowering that number? I mean, have you looked into that?
Well, I think what our plan is sort of one of the things I alluded to is as we see what happens, there can be a variety of things that are done maybe with schedule and just the timing. For example, we could have, instead of having everyone pinpoint to be there at a specific time, we could say, if it's going to take 30 minutes to bring the kids, okay, this group of parents focus on coming at 10 after the hour, this group focus at 20 after the hour, and this at 30. Because in the schools that we took a look at, they actually have standards for drop-off that might be 15, 20 seconds. So you actually, you don't have forever the people to assist in the drop-off, so you drive into the parking lot, someone is there to greet the child, but it's not a, lingering type of situation. It's drop off and keep going so that flow is there. So I think we can do things, and that's one of the things I said, is as we look at where we won't know, there'll be a lot of theory until we actually do it. And one of the things that we're accustomed to as we've grown from 90 kids to 380 kids in Clarksburg is you have to, whatever worked last year may not work this year. And so on the first week, we'll just be all trying to figure out is what we theoretically think works based on best practices from other schools and what we think can be made to work in the neighborhood, talking to the parents and the neighbors. be ready and willing to modify those things. And that's one of the reasons why we want, with the neighbors, to give them the opportunity to call the school direct and say, hey, if there are issues, we want to try and work on those right away.
Okay, and then my last question. I've done some work in the background with various charter schools. It's certainly not my expertise, but my understanding is that generally we try to increase enrollment. You have more students there. There's greater funding from the state. Is that what you're looking to do? Because the way I see it is, if you've got, you don't even have a permanent facility, so I'm not sure if you're looking to expand the size of the school while you're at these two facilities.
Well, actually, one of the things that we did from the original charter that we had with Washington Unified, we have already cut the numbers back from, we were supposed to open with 240. And they do allow to, some deviations without being what's called a material charter revision. And so we've brought the numbers down. If we keep going much below where we're at, then we have an issue in violation of the charter.
I'm sorry, I have just one more question. How exactly did you go about finding these two sites?
Well, that's interesting. Okay, we found out September 15th that the land had the toxics issue, and then we immediately started looking at commercial buildings in the north part of the city. We actually found one that we were working down the path, but it was the person who was going to work with us to do tenant improvements and to make it so it could be used as a school. It was a short sale, couldn't come up with the financing necessary to pay the price they needed. It was just going to take a long time for the transaction. And we had some of our board members driving around town looking to see where they could find places. And when we recognized that, this office building wasn't going to work, then one of the board members actually was driving around looking at churches and found these two and approached the pastors there, and they were amiable to working with us.
And do you have any alternative sites, or is this is it?
Well, for right now, this is it, because we've gone a long way with the city to get to the point of this. And like I said, as soon as we get the school up and running, my first task is going to be to immediately work on the next site, and assuming that it may be another interim site, but one that'll have a larger capacity while we wait for the land to be able to be developed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So a clarifying question. So in the staff report, it discusses 2 pick-up and drop-off locations, one at each site for the students. In your comments earlier with Commissioner Moore, you mentioned that there is one large lot on, I believe, is the Trinity site?
Yes.
That you want to use for all of the pickup and drop-off. So
No, I'm sorry, that was,
okay.
Each church will have its own pickup and drop-off, its own monitors, it'll, handle the children for that site, and Trinity will handle the...
I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. That's all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We may need to call you back up.
Okay.
I'll apologize for that in advance.
all right.
But at this point, we'll move to public comments.
Okay.
And first on deck is going to be Bill. After Bill will be Linda Brooks. And again, I have several requests to speak this evening, so we will be observing the time clock, which won't start before Bill gets up there, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. William Lowell again for the record. Basically, pardon me, I have no objection to what is being proposed, and I'm all for this kind of progress that serves the youngsters that much better. I did encounter, in reading the front page, on the lower right-hand corner, 5th line up, on the right-hand side, that first sentence reads, "It is anticipated that the school will use the facility for Saturday half-day activities on no or than 8 days." And I think that "or" should be more. And I just thought I'd straighten that little bit out. But best wishes to the churches and the children they will be teaching. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. Ms. Linda Brooks, and then after Linda is Jane Gentry.
Hello, good evening. I'm Linda Brooks. I am an elder at Trinity Presbyterian Church and also the facility manager there. I really appreciate you allowing us time to come and talk to you tonight about this conditional use permit. Peter has really given you the background, and I was just going to kind of tell you where we kind of fit into this. And it was in mid-September, and he and several board members approached our office and proposed an idea that maybe we could talk about it. And we have spent many hours with lots of talking about it to make this thing really come together and work. Two things that were very clear: it was going to be a temporary permit, and that we would seek to house the school for 2 years, and only if needed would we go to the third year. So that, I think, was a very satisfactory point for us. And it was also very clear that they had exhausted all of their other options at this point and really needed to get on with it. And so we engaged a contractor that we've been using to do some new windows and so on in various classrooms. And then I could see, we do need to move on this quickly so that we can get all the ADA requirements done and ready by the time children start in August. So briefly, all I really wanted to say was thank you for listening about this, and to let you know that all of the people in our church, many of whom live in the neighborhood, know about this. All of them are really very enthusiastic about this proposal. And as one person said, you know, you often hear about churches starting in a school. Well, we'll do it in reverse. We'll start a school in a church. So thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Ms. Gentry? After Ms. Gentry is Randy Carlson.
Good evening. My name is Jane Gentry, and I need to take off my glasses because I'm very nearsighted. I'm the office administrator, a church elder, a member of the finance team, and a member of the mission and outreach team at Trinity Presbyterian Church. So I wear lots of hats, have lots of contact with folks there, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak to you this evening. Lighthouse approached us a few months ago about renting our facility and the Baptist church nearby. It was very clear it was going to be for no more than 3 years while they prepared their school site. So as a member of the mission and outreach team, I was kind of excited about this partnering that could take place. And since our job is to reach out to the community, I thought, what a wonderful way to do it. And education is very important, so I thought this was really cool. So I did talk to the other members of our mission and outreach team. They were very supportive. And then from there, of course, Linda has presented to the church. And we have a lot of folks that are excited about this. And we want to be able to serve the children and families of the West Sacramento area as best we can. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Gentry. Randy Carlson, and then up next is Kirsten Yates.
Good evening. I'm Randy Carlson. I've been a resident of West Sacramento for 10 years as of yesterday. I am a local business owner. I live 1 block and 1 house away from the Baptist church. I frequently walk to church because it's so easy to do. When they approached us about the use of our facility for a school, I was intrigued because I've always thought that churches and schools have very similar missions and very similar needs, and they use their space at almost opposite times. So it simply makes good sense. We have quite a bit of good support in our congregation for this endeavor. I think that whatever issues we may encounter are surmountable, and we appreciate your consideration for this. The one last thing I'd like to say is we all need to keep in mind that this is about the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Ms. Yates? And then up next is Megan Bennett. Could you please state your name, make sure I got that right?
My name is Kirsten Yates, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly. I am a parent of 2 children who are enrolled for next year's school year at Lighthouse Charter. And I just wanted to address you and speak on behalf of some of the other families I know, and mostly on behalf of my family and my children, how, I guess, excited and enthusiastic we are about the school and about the opportunity that this represents. And although we've been, I think, disappointed by the fact that there's not going to be a permanent location, that we're incredibly grateful that these two churches would be willing to accommodate our school and our kids and allow the school to open up temporarily at the facility. And also, I think us parents are dedicated to making sure that we get our kids to school there safely and respectfully with neighbors, and also we're there to make sure that if we're driving, that we're going to be driving in a very safe manner as well, since we're going to be transporting small kids. And I was a former resident of a neighborhood and had a block that was, or a house that was 1 block away from the UC Davis Med Center, and was actually on the board for the neighborhood there. So I do understand what it's like to live next door to something that develops and doubles in size, and it really does change the neighborhood. But I believe that the school can work with the neighbors and minimize the impact, and I think it will be a really positive thing for the community and city as a whole. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yates. Ms. Bennett?
Hi, my name is Megan Bennett. I will have 2 children starting at Lighthouse in the fall. First off, I want to thank the churches for providing the space. It's really nice to know that we have a place to go in the meantime while we wait for our permanent location. I completely sympathize with the concerns of the community. I have an in-home child care center, and I've had to deal with people driving unsafe around the children and my neighbors being concerned about the increased traffic. We were able to find a solution, and I'm confident that Lighthouse will as well. I have already started hearing about the plans that they have to, sorry, I'm a little nervous, show as little impact as possible. I'm committed to working with the school to help enforce traffic rules around the school and the surrounding community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. My final request to speak was actually from the applicant, so I get them in order, and I take them in order. So I'll, unless you really want to come back up, thank you. Before I close the public hearing, are there any specific follow-up questions that we have of the applicant? Okay, thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. At this point, bring the conversation back to the commission for discussion with city staff. And if there are, first of all, thank you all for coming out, and thank you for your comments. I can't stress how helpful it is to hear them. Often we get the negative viewpoints or the opposition only, so it is always nice to hear positive comments.
I'd like to say a couple things, if I may. When I was serving on the Parks Commission, we had a situation that we heard where actually we had a lot of pros and cons for and opposition as well. And it ended up being between the neighborhood and the Little League. The resolution was really that the two groups needed to work together. Ultimately, when I voted at that time, and really it's where I'm leaning for this particular item, was when we're looking at issues like this, we have to really consider what the effect is on the entire community and not just a single neighborhood. I certainly don't want neighborhoods to be affected negatively, but if the benefit for the entire community far outweighs the inconvenience for a neighborhood, I lean towards what is going to benefit the entire community, and I really see this as one of those situations. I really, again, appreciate the folks who've come out, and in particular, as you know, as I disclosed at the beginning of the meeting, I've attended a school board meeting, and I've attended at least one of the kind of parent meetings for Lighthouse, and I can't tell you whether the parents have decided to enroll their children in Lighthouse or not. There's been such an outpouring of support from this community for additional schools. Our schools continue to grow here in West Sacramento. We're only building more homes, and we attract a lot of young people and young families that have children. And I'd like to support efforts to do that. I also want to underscore the fact that this is temporary, and everyone's acknowledged that. The applicant, the folks who represent, the elders who represent one of the churches, and I think that that's an important consideration as well. So when I weigh the any potential inconvenience to a neighborhood over a potentially 3-year period versus the benefit to hundreds of families in West Sacramento, I have to really weigh heavily in favor of the many families that are going to be affected positively by the opening of a school. So those are my comments, and I appreciate everyone who's come out and spoke tonight.
Thank you, Bernadette. Alex?
Just a word about why I was interested in that avoiding unnecessary car trips. Generally speaking, about a third of traffic congestion results from parents driving their kids to and from school. And the extent to which we could reduce that would benefit not only the school and not only the neighborhood, but again, the entire community because of increased safety and reduction of emissions from the automobiles. So there are lots of consultation services available. The one I know best is Safe Routes to School. And I would think a quick call to Yolo County Health Department would help put the two together. That's all I have.
Thank you. And one day I would love to see a walk-in school bus. I just really want to see it.
I
That would
want
be
to interject
awesome.
that the city of West Sacramento has been a beneficiary of Safe Routes to Schools, and I believe that there has been a version, if not a walking school bus, but to one of, I have to say possibly one of our most popular schools, which is the Bridgeway Island Elementary. They have been encouraging that type of activity. So I would say that the school district as well as the city would be really excellent resources for the applicant in looking into that. Yeah.
Parveen, do you have any comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any more on this side?
Well, I do have a couple comments, and I have to tell you, I've heard nothing but positive things about the school and how it operates down in Clarksburg and how it's doing. It's just nothing but great things. I still have my concerns about the school in the fact that I still think you need to outreach into the community. And then I'll start going down some of my concerns I have. And I guess this is kind of a staff comment. And we're doing are we going to make this a TK through 8th permit or a TK through 4 permit? Because he's not going to go beyond 4th grade if they stay 3 years.
I'm sorry.
So I
That
was
was
just
basically
concerned what your thought was.
That was basically their concept of what they were intending to ultimately configure their school for. These facilities wouldn't work for anything beyond the 4th grade. So you could certainly revise it down to TK to 4.
I was just curious. I mean, you have it written both ways in your staff report. I just didn't know which way we were voting tonight.
Charlie, is this one of the conditions? Can you point us to
Well,
one?
no, it's just on the front page, and I mean, the top of it talks about us doing, transitional kindergarten through 8th grade on the very top. And then the background, the very first sentence is they're gonna operate a transitional kindergarten through 8th grade. But as you go back up into the objective, they talk about only going through 4th grade. So it's not a big deal. I don't really care whether it's a 4th grade or a 8th grade, but it just says we're not going past 4th grade, and I didn't know why we were going to 8th grade.
As it's not a current condition, David does this actually have any bearing on this conditional use permit? Unless Mr. Moore would like to
Well,
make
no,
it
it's going to be a
condition.
school, so I mean, I just didn't know if it mattered.
Yeah, if we needed to clarify that at these two locations, that'd only be through fourth grade, we could add that in there. I know their desire ultimately is they go through eighth grade, but these sites are likely not suitable for that.
Just a point, it's a technical point, probably. And it doesn't matter, just when we get to the end, we'll come up with some brilliant idea, and Justin will tell us what we're really voting on. So as I went through all this, it looks like we started talking about the different churches, and I think we've talked about the drop-off point enough that I understand that there's going to be somebody there escorting the kids, getting them going the right direction, and that's really what I was making sure of because of the other issues. It looks like when we're dealing with First Baptist Church, they really have no activities other than their office and being open during the week that would conflict with you. Yet when I'm looking at Trinity, I'm not sure I'm getting that same answer. It looks like they have activities that take place at Trinity Church during the school hour. And is that right, Justin? It looks like when you get down into page 2 and it's talking about, said on Wednesdays we have 12 people and on Fridays we have lunch for 24. Are these taking place at the same time the school's going to be open? We're going to have people in there?
Those were submittal hours that, Peter had submitted, so I think Peter, if you could, speak to that.
Well, I mean, the issue beyond having a lunch there, one of the big things that Trinity prides themselves in doing is they have a big food giveaway program. They give away and they give it to the homeless people and people in need, and they have a ton of people show up for the food giveaway programs. And this would be right in the middle of the school. Is Trinity going to give that up and not do that anymore? And no, you can't answer, Linda. You were already talked. But, this is my question because, this is the same kind of issues we dealt with when we did the rec center and the high school. And how do you separate the rec center from the high school? And how do we separate the church from the school? And, the Baptist church apparently doesn't have anything going on during the day except just the pastor and the secretary in the office. They really have nothing. But Trinity has a number of things that I see listed here, and I'm just wondering how we're going to deal with those items and how we separate them from the church. And the food giveaway program, you can't even get near the church when they're doing that. It's such a great program that people are parked all over the place. You can't even get in there. So, hopefully, does that mean that one's going to be eliminated then from now on during the school year? And I think we need to know that because I think that's quite a bit of stuff. And one of the things that I was kind of reading here, that the school has decided they're going to put the kids out in the front by the corner where the grass area is at Trinity. So what are we going to do to protect the children out there that are that is using that as a playground? And my thought is, and we'll go back to my kids and grandkids, the one that kicks the ball and it goes underneath the wire and goes out in the street, they could care less. They're chasing the ball in the street. So what, have we thought that thing all the way through that we know how we're going to stop that in the recreational area? We certainly have to do something out there, I would think.
I suspect that'll have to be addressed as part of how the school operates and how their internal functions go in terms of how they manage the children.
Well, we won't see that, so it's going to, how do we do this, David? I'm just trying to think it all the way through here.
Yeah, we're certainly aren't advocating putting up a large fence or anything like that, especially for what's proposed to be a very, relatively short-term operation. So that'll be something internally that they'll need to, how they handle that with their staff and their teachers and other people on site.
Isn't that something we're gonna have to be at least monitoring when it comes before you and they're asking for their building permits that I'm very concerned that we're gonna have kids out there on Park Boulevard chasing a ball. We all know that there's several thousand cars that go down Park Boulevard every day, and that's just a dangerous situation out there. And so I just didn't know how we're gonna do it, or if we put some condition in here.
Could I make a recommendation that we include in the conditions of approval that the applicant will be required to submit, maybe if you're already looking into accessibility issues, safety and accessibility report for review and approval by something administrative? Is that something that would work? I mean, it wouldn't come back to us because it would be then, but.
I don't think this needs to come back to us.
I don't think it needs to either. I was just trying, as I'm reading it and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking of the children I know, I'm just a little concerned about them, because I think a kid will chase a ball. And I don't think anybody thinks differently. So, but we never talked about this in this report. We never talked about the protection. When you go over to First Baptist, they actually have a cyclone fence up around the play area. We don't have that at Trinity.
There is fencing around, from what I recall, it wasn't even related to this, but I believe that there is fencing around the playground area, and I don't know I know the public hearing is
No,
closed, but perhaps.
that's at Baptist. At First Baptist, there is a fence. But at Trinity, at 15th Street, all there is the little wire that they put up. There's no fence up there at all.
I'm saying between the playground structure. Are you saying that during pickup and drop off, the kids are going to run in the street?
No, I'm saying,
Well, so back
It
to my
says
point,
here
do you
it-
think that a condition of approval for accessibility and safety report from the applicant would be something that would suffice, or?
I don't know. That's why I was asking David how we look at this.
No, that certainly is something that can be addressed to the building permit phase, and how that plays out, because they need to be looking at the site holistically anyway for accessibility matters. So that's something that we can easily incorporate into that analysis.
Okay, then my other question being, what do we do about the multiple uses taking place at the facility?
It certainly is, contemplated and expected that there will be some overlap in some of those activities during this. We're not aware of the church foregoing any of its regular activities, to be able to host, this school. We certainly aren't pretending that there will not be some degree of overlap, during this relatively short period of time when this, the school would be operational.
I struggle a little bit with some of it, just that you have that kind of, we went into such detail at the high school and how we prevented them and what we were doing to protect the children, and here you have children that are gonna be standing with 100 people trying to collect food or something, and I'm just trying to figure out I just wanna know how we're gonna protect the kids. And I just don't know if that's our issue or we should even be concerned about it, but I'm a little concerned about it.
Commissioner Moore, I'd like to respond to that. First of all, on page 3 of the staff report, under the analysis, paragraph C, as Mr. Tilley just explained, it is anticipated that this is going to be a joint use between the church's existing programs and the temporary school activities. However, in listening to your concerns about student safety, perhaps we can amend project condition number 4, which is on page 4 of the staff report, so that it reads, both locations shall have the appropriate number of parking attendants to keep the traffic flowing and assisting parents and students to expedite this process while maintaining student safety. And while that's broad language, the following sentence says that if there are complaints, the applicant does have to address it within a week. And so that would allow some parameters in making sure that there are things that measures being taken to make sure that students are safe.
And again, I'm not trying to get rid of the school. I think the school, from everything I've been told, the school is a great opportunity for students. But I just want to make sure that they're safe at that school site. And I don't know how we do that unless you ask that, you know, the church not have things go on while school's in session. And yet we couldn't do that at the rec center, so then we made sure that it was blocked off some way. And I think at least in the building process, we need to be looking at how we're going to protect the children somewhat when they have other activities, if they're going to have other activities, and only Ms. Brooks will be able to tell you that. And then, after that, you look at the safety issue out in front, and you make sure that the playground area has some sort of protection to keep the kids from running out into the area. And remember, when we're talking about these kids, you know, at First Baptist, they're all kindergartners, and here at Trinity, they're all going to be first graders and then maybe second graders the second year. So we're talking about very young children in there, and I think we need to make sure that we protect them as best we can. And I think it, you know, whether we do it at the Planning Commission level, you know, usually these things are all drawn out so we can see exactly what they're going to do. But, you know, if we're not going to do that, then at least at the building permit level, we need to at least make sure that we're trying to protect the children in some way. And that's my concern.
Okay. Andrew?
I want to thank both the applicant, the public, and also staff for the hard work and thoughtfulness that went into putting this partnership together. I think it's a great use of existing space, which is something everyone on this commission feels strongly about. I think in some way or another, making sure that the spaces we have that are built to do these types of activities are actually being utilized to their full potential. And so as far as what is required of us and our requirements to look at in approving this or not approving this item, I'm fully supportive of approving this item at the appropriate time. That being said, I think there is concern not only from other commissioners, but even among myself about the safety implications, and not just of the park not having a fence, but of having two separate school sites that are really one school, and the dynamics that have to take place. I'm just thinking from an operational standpoint, are you going to have a principal at both schools, or is there always going to be a certain person with a certain level of first aid and safety training at both schools? What happens at a fire drill at one school? Do they both have a fire drill at the same time? What happens in case of emergency? Where does everybody meet and go to? And I realize these items are completely outside of the jurisdiction of what we've been asked to look at. That being said, I think it's our obligation to make sure that when the city goes and makes a real effort to work with a school to make a successful outcome take place, that we all owe it to the community to make sure that this effort is successful. And so I don't feel like I've heard enough in respect to what the school is going to be doing and how the city's going to be working with the school to mitigate some of those safety issues tonight. But then again, that is outside of the purview, in my opinion, of what we're asking to look at. So I'm leaving that more as a comment and requesting that there really be given some additional thought and some additional information sharing with not just the city, but with the community on what the safety aspects of these two school sites will be, and what will happen in case there's an emergency or in case something happens, and what does that look like, and what does it look like when the 50 kindergartners go over to the other school to hear a concert? How do you get 50 kindergartners 2 blocks and across Park Boulevard? You know, what is going to be the staff requirement and the volunteer requirement that's going to make sure that that happens safely every time it has to happen? And so I fully trust your and have full confidence in the ability to figure those things out. But I am sympathetic to the concerns and the fact that, you know, we're in some regards asked to think about the safety of our community through our decisions, and those are things that are still lingering in my head. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Andrew. David, could you actually respond to one thing that's come up and possibly provide some, or David or Justin, I'm sorry, possibly provide some structure to our conversation here. This is a charter school, so it's not quite a public school, but I'm assuming that there are guidance documents that will dictate much of how this school is going to operate, as well as safety requirements. So we've had similar discussions with, say, preschools.
I think in terms of the safety operation of the school, I think the applicant would be best to respond to that, those questions directly through their operation and characteristics of the school. I too am very familiar with charter schools myself, and in a different location, and so I understand the dynamics from my personal standpoint. But with these two locations of your concerns, I think the applicant really needs to address your concerns of how they're going to meet with them in the near term and the long term, because those are characteristics of their operation. We can condition, if you still see need, to require them to provide us documentation or safety plan, but there may be elements within their charter to the school district that requires them to do X, Y, and Z. So I would encourage the applicant to be involved with this discussion.
Okay. I'll go ahead and reopen the public hearing if Mr. Stone wouldn't mind responding to those specific comments, specifically addressing guiding principles for
Right.
charter schools.
One of the things that the key is, we start off with besides the education code for the state of California, because the charter school is a public school, publicly funded in virtually the same way as the public schools are. There are some different rules from school districts, and we're bound, and actually the school district is called our authorizer, and we have to report to them every 6 months, of both financially and in a variety of other ways. And the authorizer put certain requirements on us in addition to the charter that basically bind us to the things that we're to do, so that they can meet their fiduciary responsibilities to oversee the charter school. Secondly, we have our school board is, River Charter Schools is a 501c3, and we conduct all our meetings, Brown Act kinds of meetings, public meetings, and there are a number of different things. So for example, to talk about safety and specifically address the concerns that you were mentioning, we plan to have, there'll be a school secretary at the Baptist church. There'll be a school secretary at the Presbyterian church. There'll be a principal who, because it's the larger facility, will be located at the Presbyterian church, but will do the kinds of activities the principal does, which is going around making sure everything's going. He'll go back and forth, she will go back and forth between the two sites. And as far as we've even gotten to the point of dealing with some of the phones and the technology that we put in, we will have our own phone number that goes to the Trinity Church, but we will also have, for safety reasons, we will have a separate direct phone number that goes to the Baptist church, so that we're not just relying on an internal kind of a transfer from one to the other, so that communication either from parents or from staff in the school. And by the way, in each classroom, there are phones for the teachers. So we have phones for the teachers in the classrooms. We have radios as well for the teachers. And so we'll make sure that there's communication between the two. And the primary movement of personnel will be the principal going one to the other. Because one of the keys is when we're at either school, you can't have the teachers being interrupted by parents coming directly and going to them. So they will have an office at both churches. And in terms of, we have a security committee or safety committee, particularly when we're dealing with issues of how to deal with lockdowns, how to deal with a whole number of things. We have a safety committee at our existing school, and we have a safety committee at this school that will, working with the parents, make sure that we've got those policies in place that'll work with the environment that we have. So I don't know, if that helps a little bit. But there still is a lot to be worked out, because in terms of actually getting agreements signed with the churches and actually knowing that this was all a go, that's relatively recently. So we have a lot of things that we're going to be working on. But the key is now working with and galvanizing parents who are going to be working together, volunteers, to help sort through a number of these things. And ultimately, they've got to be feeling comfortable that they're going to bring their child and have them, at this school, given the circumstances that we have.
No, I thank you for your comments and appreciate them. Obviously, I think in many ways, a lot of those comments are probably outside the purview of the decision we're being asked to make, but in the same token, I think a lot of the laws you mentioned, either at the state level or at the school board level, are designed for schools that are a singular site. And so given the unique circumstances of having two sites in one, I just think it's really important, and it sounds like you feel the same way and are addressing that, to make sure that those unique needs are not only thought about early on, but fully vetted, addressed, considered, shared with not just staff here at the city, but the school board, your parents, and the community, so that everyone can feel confident in the safety that's being provided. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you for coming back up.
You're welcome.
I'm actually going to leave the public hearing open until we get through Ms. Guerrero, because there may actually be a final question regarding conditioning, and I don't like to modify conditions without the applicant. Ms.
Chair
Guerrero?
Liebig, if I may just quickly interject, it is true that to a significant extent, since the Planning Commission's jurisdiction is really limited to land use and planning, and that's where we have to stay, we can't really delve too much into the school operations, and as the applicant just explained, most of that is governed by state law anyway. However, in listening to a few of the commissioners' comments regarding the specific and unique issues related to the location of these two school sites, I do have proposed language to be added as a condition of project approval should the commission agree to it and should the applicant agree to it. And that would be, prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit a plan identifying measures to keep students safe during joint use activities with the church and while students are at school. Such measures can include, but shall not be limited to, fencing and adult supervision. This will potentially alleviate some of the commissioners' concerns with student safety while still allowing the project applicant with enough discretion to implement those measures which would be most effective.
Thank you. That text actually sounded quite reasonable to me, and in my opinion, would replace also the need for the modified condition number 4.
Right.
Ms. Guerrero?
Yes, thank you very much. I want to thank those that spoke today. It provided me with some insight about the parents' interest and the community's interest to have the school in our community, and the need for this, and the growing community that we have is really important. I want to echo Commissioner Austin's comments in the need to provide support for that in our community. I also wanted to emphasize that the partnership between the two churches and the school, the charter school, has been annotated in the comments here today strongly, and I think moving forward, I feel that some of the concerns that were raised can be addressed. I've seen churches, on the school site, there's it and not being fenced off, and so I think that in Catholic churches, I think that it's possible for there to be a joint community and for the children to be safe. That's in a K-8 school setting. There was an interest to limit it from TK to 4. I would prefer to keep this open. I don't want to set a precedent for that. on this site, so I would prefer to just keep it open to the TK through 8. And it's because it really doesn't, I think the applicant has already plans on what to do and made it pretty clear. And I think that the churches have made it pretty clear that that's the agreement, and are interested in sticking to that agreement, that it going no higher than the 4th grade. So for that reason, I feel comfortable leaving the language here that we have here in the conditional use permit. And so I'm also very supportive as we move forward, and appreciate the presentation and the background from everyone and it has been provided, so that I feel comfortable making a decision.
Thank you, Martha. At this point, I will ask the applicant, and he can just do a nod, if you're okay with the text as read earlier. Okay, thank you so much. He's indicated by nodding yes. I am going to close the public hearing. I'm happy to encourage a range of educational opportunities for our city, which would serve a variety of student needs within our community. If I can capture everybody's comments earlier, I do believe that there are some potential minor impacts to the community, mostly related to traffic. I also believe that those are temporary, and that the school will do their best to manage those activities. I've spoken with a direct neighbor of the school in Clarksburg, and she had nothing but positive things to say about living next to the school and the school itself. I also concur that this is going to be a benefit for the community, and I want to see that walking school bus. I think the biggest conflict that the students are going to have with the church would occur on Sundays, and that's not a school day. I also attended church while growing up with a school on site. It's called Happy Hours. Ironic name for a school and a church.
Your school, yeah.
And I never did see that as a problem, but I appreciate the concern, and I think the added condition really covers just about all of the other concerns. So thank you, everyone, for coming out, all of your comments. With that, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the requested conditional use permit, subject to the findings and with the additional amendment in the conditions of approval as identified in the staff report.
Moved by Vice Chair Guerrero.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Sternfeld. All approved, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Mr. Tilley.
Yes, any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and the appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Thank you. That is actually the last item on our agenda, with the exception of informal discussion.
I've got just one piece. I want to say that it's April 26th, but I can get you the details. Dina Kirtley, the city's urban forest manager, has an Arbor Day celebration every year. It's great. I think we're going to be planting 10 trees. So if you're interested, you can contact staff, and they can make sure that you get the details about that. And that's not just for commissioners, for people in the audience as well. And that's it. That's enough for me.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.